Hello, welcome to the video. Let me tell you a few things about this lost skull. Maybe we can find out who she was or where she came from. It's been in my custody, I'd say. I want to say custody. I don't want to say possession because this was once a baby. This was a child. This was someone's child. Possibly someone's brother or sister. Um, I'm convinced I'm convinced this was a woman, a Caucasian European woman, middle-aged, 30s to 50s, maybe early 60s. I've done enough research on it. That's what I believe. I'm not an expert, but either way, it was someone's child. And through DNA testing, it may be possible to find out who their family was. I had my DNA testing done, and whoa, you talking about some surprises coming back in that I wasn't planning on, or I wasn't expecting. So, I find new distant cousins all the time. So I'm sure this person has some family floating around it's probably someone who donated their body to science, but I don't know that. And it would be a dream come true. It would be something to knock off my bucket list if I could finally find out who she was or who this person was, and what were their dreams, what were they like, how did they end up here. I'll tell you a little bit about my history with it, and then I want to show you a few things about the human skull that are actually quite fascinating and very interesting. And then I'll tell you how I got it, and that's pretty much all I'm going to have to offer for now. But my uncle had this when I was a kid. I remember seeing it when I was around 4 years old, and he convinced me at that age that this was my grandpa, and my sweet great grandpa had actually chainsawed the top of my grandpa's head off. I mean, my poor grandma never knew that I was terrified of her for a year or more because I believed that. But he told me I could have it when he got older. I remember being about 7 years old, and all the adults went to sleep, and I was up alone with this thing. And that movie, The Skulls, came on, so I'm sure I experienced some trauma from it. When he sadly died when I was 9, my dad didn't want nothing to do with it, so he honored my uncle's wishes and gave it to me, and I've had custody ever since. Um, that's clay all over it because when I was a teenager, my mom reminded me. She said, "I thought you was gonna bury that," and I planned on it, but it just felt incomplete. I wanted to know more about her. So I put it up in the attic in the crawl space. You know how some Indian tribes would bury their loved ones up on a plank, wrap them in a blanket? Well, that's kind of what I did. I wrapped her in a blanket, put her up in the top of the attic, and forgot about it for years. And one day I saw my teddy bear laying there. I had a few teddy bears when I was a kid. One of those chimpanzees with the banana fingers. It got banana thumb. They can stick the thumb in their mouth. And I had a Budweiser teddy bear and a teddy dog and a teddy bear. And I moved them, and underneath them was his skull. Talking about creepy or eerie. I mean, I'm glad I'm not superstitious, but it almost felt like she was like, "Hey, you've forgotten me up here." So I took her down, and guessing how scientists can bring a face back to life. Well, we put some wax on it. We put some clay all over it. We put a nose on it, and instantly the face began to emerge. I mean, I didn't have no internet back then to go by how to do that, but it was all just guessing. And after you put the nose on it, we put clay all around the lips, and then a wig. I put a little tin foil and some latex over that, and the face began to emerge almost instantly. We put some eyes in it, of course, and it was just amazing how you could see the person that used to be there. I mean, how close I really was to what they actually look like, who knows? But the human face began to emerge, and it was actually it was touching and kind of heartbreaking at the same time because who was this person? What was their dreams? She originally had all her teeth, but being a dumb kid I was, there's always some other kid to say, hey, that's not real. So, all right, we pull a tooth out, break the tooth. There's roots. There's tooth roots in there. The teeth are full blood. And that's what now gives me the idea that maybe I can get some DNA out of it. You can see the ear bones inside there. Those could possibly hold DNA. There's a lot of detail. The human skull is very complex. And one of the most fascinating things about it is her forehead, this person's forehead, was hollow. The nasal passages go all the way up to the top. You can see right here, how the brain would fit nicely in there. You can see the veins. You can see that some parts of the human skull are incredibly thin. I mean, like dangerously thin. Light shines through in some areas. It's transparent. You can see the finger moving through there. Well, at least I can. I don't know about on this camera, but how the nasal passages, no wonder you get a headache when you have a cold, because it's all the way up into your forehead, almost to her hairline. In the proper light, you can see the ear holes in there. You can see how the brain case just fits. The brain fits totally in there. I mean, but what's also very, that's just scary to me, is the fact that all throughout the brain, the skeleton, it's sharp. It's jagged, sharp edges. I mean, I know that tissue would have covered all that, but like even the neck hole right here, that right there is about as sharp as my lawnmower blade at the end of summer. It just doesn't seem like it would take very hard of a hit to cause that to become separated. She once had beautiful, perfect teeth. Why I think she's an older person is because the bones have begun to fuse. These top sutures here have all begun to grow together as in one bone, and that starts to happen later in life. As a baby, they would have been all separated. They grow together, the hole closes, and then it begins to fuse. So this person was probably 30s or 40s, but they had all the adult teeth. No, I think the wisdom teeth were gone. Originally, this had a couple of springs that held the jawbone on, but as a 9-year-old, yeah, that didn't last long. How I ended up receiving this, coming to my custody, was my uncle. He had it in the early 60s or late 70s in the St. Louis area, and the only thing I was ever told, it was stolen from a college. So, did she know that, people donate their bodies to science, but is that what she thought would happen? I mean, my parents were cremated largely because of this. I lost my son 2 years ago. I couldn't even imagine something like this happened to my son, my daughter, my grandchildren. It's just a nightmare. She at least has another body out there somewhere. And, ghouls still dig up graves, and they were digging up graves and selling the bodies to scientists well into the late 1800s. So, she could have easily come from that time. Probably not that old, but like I said, I have no way to know. So if anybody has any ideas how I could take some DNA from this and how to get it tested, I'm all ears. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Bye.